Okay, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gina, and today is part 2 of what happened, why did I step away, and what's the plan moving forward. If you haven't watched part 1, I'll link it in the iCards, but this part is the video where I'm going to talk about how almost the second to last week of my husband going through radiation, my mom took ill and essentially she passed away. She was in remission. However, she had very bad side effects from the radiation that kind of like kept her having infections, going into the hospital, things of that nature. So all along, my mom always said, if the cancer ever comes back, I'm not doing anything. She chose to not follow up with an oncologist because in her mind, she felt like, well, if I'm not going to do anything about it, what's the point of knowing? So over the course of the 3 years, 2-3 times a year, she would end up with a really, really bad infection and end up in the hospital. So, and it would always happen really, really fast. Like she would be fine 1 minute, the next thing you know, my dad would be taking her to the hospital. So that same exact scenario happened this last time. And I talked to her like on a Monday afternoon, and she was, from what I thought, she was okay. She normally would tell me if she was having like symptoms of an infection and stuff like that, but she never made mention of that. That was at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon I talked to her. Well, about 8 p.m. the same day, my dad called and he's like, hey, your mom's not feeling well. I think I should take her to the hospital. But she didn't want to go. Well, this time she was very emotional. She was like crying, like, no, Gina, please don't make me go. I was just encouraging her to go. She went to the hospital. By like 10 o'clock, he sent me a text message. He was like, this is different. Finally contacted me at about 4 o'clock in the morning and said that they were keeping her and that they had given her a room and that he wanted me to call the nurse when I got a chance. So, well, before I could even call the nurse, my dad called me back at like 6 in the morning, like something is wrong. It's like they just called and said they had to rush her to intensive care, that her blood pressure dropped really, really low, and I don't know what's going on, but I'm going back to the hospital. So I'm like, oh my God. So my parents are very self-sufficient. Also at the same time, my parents love Kevin a great deal, and for the past year and a half, they've been heavily involved and super concerned about his well-being. So I knew if I told my dad, like, hey, do you think I should, fly up there? No matter how bad it was, I knew he would tell me no, just simply because of what all I had going on with Kevin. And he just would not want to be what he would consider being a burden. So I didn't ask him if I should come. I got on the phone with my brother and told my brother what was going on. At the time, my brother had just tested positive for COVID, so he couldn't come up there. So started talking to some people close to me. Now, mind you, we were in a horrible financial situation. Our car was broken down. So basically no transportation, even locally, let alone trying to figure out how I was going to fly up to Illinois from Tennessee. But thank God I was able, and something just told me, just get a one-way ticket for now. That way you're not pressed in terms of when to come back. I spoke with Kevin because of course Kevin was going through radiation. So I felt torn, like, oh my God, like, should I stay with him while he finishes radiation or go with my mom? You know what I mean? But when I talked to my husband, and despite what he was going through, he was like, go be with your mom. He was like, I would never put you in a position to make that choice. So that really touched my heart. And I know he loves my parents just as much as they love him. Didn't tell my dad that I was coming. I flew to Chicago. I had one of my friends come pick me up at the airport and take me straight to the hospital where my mom was. She was in intensive care and she was responsive. She was coherent. She knew what was going on, but she was like at the maximum dose of 3 different medications to keep her blood pressure up. So me being an ICU nurse, I knew that it was very serious and very critical. So I got to the hospital. No sooner than I walked into my mom's room, she noticed that somebody had stepped in the room, and she turned and she looked at me and she told one of the nurses, like, I know her. So I was like, yeah, Ma, it's me, I'm here, you know. So at that same moment, my dad was calling my phone like, oh, did you call your mom? Did you talk to her? And so I'm like, I'm talking to her right now, Dad. And he was like, oh, good. So then I was like, Mom, say hi to Daddy. And so my mom, I was standing at her bedside, and she was like, hi, baby. And my dad was like all confused. And he was like, that's really weird. I can hear her through your phone, because he thought I was on the other line talking to her. I was like, yeah, because I'm right here standing next to her. And he was like, what? I was like, I'm here in the hospital room standing next to her. He was like, you're in Illinois? And I was like, yes. And so they both almost simultaneously was like, where's Kevin? Who's with Kevin? So I was like, don't worry. The kids are there with Kevin. Everything is under control. You know, I'm here to make sure that you're okay. My dad just started crying. And he was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. He was like, I'm so mad at you that you came here with everything that you have going on. He was like, but oh my God, thank you, because I know what I was going to do. So I said, well, what you're going to do tonight is you're going to go to sleep. I'm here. I'll spend the night with Mom, and you rest. I stayed there with my mom. She progressively got worse. She was not responding to antibiotics. She started expressing that she wanted to go home. In the course of them doing tests to look at her kidneys and stuff like that, they did let us know that she had cancer lesions basically everywhere, that it had spread. It was in her bones, in her lymph nodes, just everywhere. So we opted, because my mom wanted to go home so bad. She was very adamant that she wanted to go home, but she was also on some very strong drugs that were maintaining her blood pressure. So before we spoke to hospice, I wanted her to make sure she understood what she was asking us to do. I was like, I know, Mommy, you want to go home, and we want you to go home because we want you to be comfortable. I said, but you're on some very strong medications that in order for us to take you home, we have to turn those medications off. And I was like, I need you to understand and tell me that you understand that there's a possibility that we'll turn those drugs off and your blood pressure will drop out and you'll die. I said, do you want us to take that chance in order to get you home? And she looked me right in the eye and said, Gina, take me home. So I said, okay, that's what we're going to work on. By the time we set everything up, Friday we were supposed to turn all her medications off at 10:30 in the morning. So Thursday night, I stayed at the hospital with her every night. I never really left her. So Thursday night, you know, I'm an ICU nurse, so I was watching everything that was going on. I didn't miss a beat. But this particular night, this Thursday night, when I knew that what we had to do Friday morning, I stopped watching everything. I stopped watching the nurses. I stopped worrying about the medications, and I just stayed right at her side, and I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed the whole night. And I literally asked God, like, please just let us get her home where she wants to be. That's all I'm asking. Literally, I told God, I don't care if she's there only 5 minutes. That's all I want, is for us to be able to take her home. So I prayed that same prayer all night, all night. That's all I did. So at about 5 o'clock that morning, her nurse walked up to me and said, I just turned the last medication off, and her blood pressure is kind of she's holding her own. And I was like, what do you mean the last medication? She was on 3 different ones. And she was like, I've been able to turn them off one by one all through the night, and her blood pressure is maintaining. So I waited till like 7 o'clock, and her blood pressure was still okay, because I didn't want to give my dad any false hope. And so at about 7 o'clock, I called my dad, and I'm like, Dad, we don't even have to withdraw, treatment, because she's basically not on anything right now. I was like, they turned all the blood pressure medicine off. So I was like, by the time the hospice nurse comes at 10:30, I think that's a long enough time. As long as her blood pressure is still okay, they probably will be okay with transporting her home. So sure enough, the hospice nurses came. They set up transportation for that afternoon. She ended up coming home at like about 6 o'clock Friday evening. And from that moment on, I took care of my mom around the clock. And I told you guys we were having really, really bad car trouble. We didn't have any reliable transportation, I'll say. But the Monday, we brought her home on Friday. The Monday after that, my dad came to me, and he had already told me, don't worry about anything. I'll buy you a ticket to go back to Nashville when the time comes or whatever. Don't worry, I got you. I said, okay. My dad has always had me my whole life. So that Monday, he was like, will you be okay with your mom for, a couple hours? I got to go handle some business. I said, of course. So I stayed there with my mom. My dad was gone for a while. Then he came back, and he's like, come here, have Alexis, my daughter, stay in there with your mom while you come out here with me. I got to show you something. So I said, okay. So he takes me outside. I'm like, you got to show me something outside? And he's like, yeah, come on. So I stepped outside on the porch, and he gives me this, like, the keys looked real big, right? So I'm like, what is this? He was like, oh, just keep walking. And when I walked and I finally got to the driveway, my dad turned to me, and he was like, this is from your mom and me, just to say thank you for being the best daughter that we could ever ask for dropping everything and coming here to take care of your mom. He was like, because of you, I was able to bring her home and grant her wish of coming home. He was like, I couldn't have done it without you. And so I know I was supposed to buy you a ticket to fly back to Nashville, but I just went and bought you a new car instead. Y'all, I was like beside myself. Now, mind you, I couldn't even really be happy as I wanted to be for the new car, because we needed it so bad, and we were in such a bad financial situation. But my mom was in the house dying. So, I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, I really, really appreciate it. You have no idea. And I told him, I'm like, Dad, only you can bring me this much joy in the midst of my sorrow. So, fast forward, it was a long, difficult week. I would say even as a nurse, as a healthcare provider, it was one of the hardest things that I ever done in my life. And but I'm grateful to have the opportunity that I had to not just be here, but to get her home where she wanted to be in her own environment and comfortable. I'm grateful that she knew that she got here. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to take care of her. And I did that. And she transitioned that following Friday at about 1 o'clock in the morning with me and my dad at her side. It's been rough. I'm still having a difficult time. Since then, I ended up going back home to Tennessee to finish, because Kevin still had another week of radiation. But just stay tuned, guys. I'm not going to cry at every video, I promise. But it's been very hard. We've had a lot of transitions since then. We have relocated back here to Illinois. We actually live here with my dad. So we'll talk about that in future videos, how how that affects my budget, what our plan is in terms of budgeting together as a family, all kinds of good stuff, okay? Not everything's sad. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please press that subscribe button and don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss another part of this video. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sorry if it was long. I'm gonna try to see if I can edit some of it out to shorten it up. But you guys, take care and see you in the next video. Bye.